I'd like to start this morning with a question. Do you consider yourself a Jewish American or an American Jew? Take a moment and think about it. There's an analogy I invite you to think about to further illustrate this, and I apologize in advance that food comes into it. I'm going to say a noun, and I invite you to fill out the rest with two other nouns in the same category. So when I say apple, most likely you would say orange, banana. When I say baseball, you would probably say something like basketball or football. When I say Jew, what would you say? Take a moment and think about it. Avraham Infeld, eminent Jewish scholar and former president of Hillel International, often tells how thousands of college students at Hillels around America would answer Jew, Christian, Muslim. For Jews in Israel or other countries, almost every single person would say Jew, Arab, Russian, or Jew, Arab, Argentinian. What's the difference? In America, we believe Judaism is our religion, and we are part of the American people. But Jews all over the world, by and large, believe that Judaism is a people, a nation. Religion may be part of it, but first and foremost, Jews are a people. For most of our history, religion was synonymous with the national identity of the Jewish people. Whether living in shtetls in modern-day Lithuania or in cities throughout Syria, our nationality was Jewish. We did not have equal citizenship to other non-Jewish citizens, so we relied on both our religion to guide our happiness and our rabbinic literature, such as the Talmud or Shulchan Aruch, to govern our societies. The Jewish people didn't have equality until the 18th century, when emancipation led to equality and citizenship for the first time in the history of our people. With emancipation, Jews had the opportunity to become French or German. Judaism then changed to balance both of these identities. It was then that the Reform, Conservative, and Modern Orthodox movements formed to figure out how to hold both a Jewish and other national identity. It was also then that the ultra-Orthodox, or in Hebrew, Haredim, formed to keep the Jewish people and religion separate from modernity entering into their society. In America, the way we view ourselves now took shape from the moment Jews moved en masse to the U.S. in the late 19th century. The Pittsburgh Platform, an ideological statement for Reform Judaism, written in 1885, said, "We consider ourselves no longer a nation, but a religious community." Whether you are a Jew by birth, by choice, or by association, we see Judaism as a religious practice and that alone. I'm worried that as Americans, by holding Judaism only as our religion, we're missing one of the central aspects of the Jewish experience that's been a part of Judaism since the beginning. I believe Jewish peoplehood is a key to experiencing a wholeness in our lives, and it's part of Judaism we can't lose if we want to keep a thriving community in America. The Talmud goes even further when it says, Kol Yisrael Aravim Zeh B'Zeh, translated to all Jews are responsible for one another. All Jews are guarantors for one another. In the past year, through my travels and living in Israel, I discovered the power of a strong connection to the Jewish people, Am Yisrael, and how important it is that we keep this bond strong. On this Yom Kippur, I ask if you have done enough to keep the Jewish people strong, secure, and thriving. I believe it's essential that in our teshuvah, our return, we return to the Jewish people, not only for the sake of the whole, but to enhance our own lives. In 2019, like the polarization seemingly everywhere, the Jewish community is ripping apart. We're so busy arguing about who's too pro-Israel, who's too anti-Israel, who's loyal or not, who is too religious and who is not religious enough. We will never be uniform, Infeld says, but we need to be united for Judaism to succeed. I believe we're at risk of splitting our people further apart than we've ever been, and that split may harm our safety and fulfillment in the years to come. Of the 14.6 million Jews worldwide, from Israel to China to Brazil, we are one diverse group. Chaim Nachman Bialik, great Jewish writer and philosopher of the late 19th century, said, "If we investigate ancient Jewish times, and perhaps even its earliest history, we shall discover those two tendencies. No nation strives to be swallowed up in other groups as much as the Jews, and at the same time to remain an entity whose least particle is still recognizably Jewish. We are at risk of losing that entity. And if we're not guarantors of each other like the Talmud demands, who will be?" So I discovered last year, on the first night of Passover, I was in the most unlikely of places. I was in Chernomorsk, Ukraine. It's an hour outside Odessa on the Black Sea, with 30 members of the Reform Jewish community in Odessa. We were there on what's called the Passover Project, a project where 15 of my classmates worked with Jewish communities around the former Soviet Union to help put on Passover Seders. Most people in the room did not know a thing about Judaism until 1989, when the Soviet Union fell, and they were allowed to practice religion. And in recent years, they've started learning about Judaism and the Jewish people. As we go through all of the essential parts of the Seder, I couldn't help but look around each time we sang common words and feel so connected to all the Jews present. We were all saying the same words. We all took that first bite of matzah just as my family was the same night on the other side of the globe, and just as Jews in Romania were as well. Most participants spoke zero English, so we communicated through a translator. Even without the ability to talk, I felt so close to them. I realized I felt more connected to them than most Americans. After the Seder, they have a tradition of dancing together. The teens put on a Hebrew song called Ba Khalil, which roughly means, "Come on, live easy." It has a catchy beat, and the teens had a choreographed dance to Ba Khalil they learned at a camp called Sarvash. This is a camp sponsored by the American Joint Distribution Committee, or JDC, and has over 1,600 campers from over 30 countries each summer. They started teaching me the dance, and we had a blast. We did the dance over and over that weekend. And I couldn't help but think of this dance as a symbol for the Jewish connection. The song uses a flute as a motif for celebration. The flute is an instrument written about in the ancient temple times. Rabbinic texts recall that the flute was used to lead processions to the Holy Temple, the Beit HaMikdash, on harvest holidays, such as Sukkot, Shavuot, and Passover. And here we were, linking the past with the future. Jews from Ukraine were dancing to a pop song in our common Hebrew language about a motif from the Bible. A month later, I had the opportunity to travel to India with the JDC. There are 4,000 Jews in India today. It was mind-blowing for me to be on a Shabbaton with Jewish Indian young adults who looked, dressed, and spoke very different from me. Yet when we entered a synagogue in the southern city of Cochin, looking unlike anything I could imagine a synagogue could look like, we all sang the Shema and Shehechianu together. Chills ran over me as I watched their lips mouth these words I've known from a young age. There are different traditions and different holiday foods, yet seeing how important Judaism was to them made me realize why it's so important to me. I felt the world becoming a smaller, more loving place, and I felt connected. And after Shabbat, we did the Bakaleel dance. Again, a moment where Hebrew tied together young adults in India and Ukraine through their Jewish connection. The flute appears again, dancing in celebration from the temple times all the way to a hotel in southern India. However, supporting other Jews can be challenging today. In Israel, this was amplified for me. I had cab drivers mock me for studying to be a Reform rabbi, and mock my name Sam for making Shmuel an American name. I was spit on and called profanities by ultra-Orthodox men at the Western Wall while I stood in solidarity with my female classmates who wanted to pray as they wish. And I was discriminated against for being gay and denied service at a pizza shop. I was infuriated with Israelis and many Jews who have different values than me. Yet throughout last year, something shifted. I saw Israelis who believed exactly what I believed, came from exactly where my family did with the same traditions, and had the same dreams as me. I saw Israelis creatively working to help at-risk populations, both Jews and Arabs. And I saw all types of people working out side by side at the local YMCA. But what really did it for me was every Shabbat, when the siren goes off in Jerusalem, signaling Shabbat has arrived. People all over Israel would celebrate Shabbat in various ways, many saying the same words that I say over the wine and bread. On Rosh Hashanah, I heard blasts of the shofar all day in the street, echoing from different apartments. And on Yom Kippur, the streets of Israel are closed, simply to pedestrians and bikers to be together, reflect, atone, and be present in the holiday. In the same country where I felt alienated, I felt a sense of unity like never before. I saw that Jews are not uniform, and we will never be. Yet by not helping or supporting some of my people, I was also neglecting those that gave me a richer connection. I realized just because ultra-Orthodox Jews might not show me the respect I want, it's still my duty. If we look at the prayers we've been saying all day, it's almost entirely been in first person plural. Al chet shechatanu lefanecha, the sin we have committed against you. Avinu malkeinu, our Father, our King. Our faith is written about the collective Jewish people. We pray as people, not as individuals. The first person plural includes those standing in this room, and it includes the ultra-Orthodox Jews who are praying right now in Jerusalem. On Yom Kippur, all Jews stand equally before God, regardless of practice, tradition, sin committed, or wealth. Our prayers say we are one people, Am Yisrael. And if we pray as one, we are also responsible for one another. The Talmud doesn't ask us to be responsible for what other Jews believe or what other Jews practice or pray. It demands us to be responsible for other Jews as people. What does that look like? Over the past year, have you taken responsibility for a Jew in need? Or upon disagreement with a Jew, have you worked to heal that wound, knowing we need each other? This matters because I see too many liberal Jews in America abandoning the Jewish cause for more universal causes. I hear the Jewish values of tikkun olam, or repairing the world. The values of tikkun olam or repairing the world tie us together with other Jews. But I don't believe this value is enough of a connective tissue. We need something more for us to stay united as a people. Judaism also tells us that life is better lived in community and part of something larger than yourself. I remember when I graduated college, I moved to New York City and I felt so lost. Pretty soon, I felt connections to the city and to people through the Jewish community that my non-Jewish friends didn't have so instantly. I had organizations to support me socially and professionally. And when I met people in the city, it was the Jews that I clicked with instantly due to some unspeakable connection. And when I traveled, I had a safety net and people to look out for, people that invited me for Shabbat, and that synagogue that you have to check out in Rome, where I'd meet other Jews from around the world walking around and feel at home in this foreign country. On the academic side, renowned book Bowling Alone by Robert Putnam explains how essential it is that human beings build their social capital. Friendships, relationships, acquaintances, or people we regularly interact with, as tight bonds with people in a society bring us wholeness a computer can't substitute. The book describes how our society today is falling away from that, and people's social capital is dropping, which is leading us to experiencing less and less fulfillment and happiness than we ever have as a society. If we build our social capital, we can live fuller, happier lives. And Jewish Peoplehood is giving us this opportunity. Jewish communities across the world support one another in unparalleled ways that other minority groups aren't. In America, organizations like Jewish Family Services and the American Joint Distribution Committee, JDC, are welfare organizations where we take care of our own, and they are in place in case we should need it. After visiting a Jewish preschool in Ukraine or an elderly home in Romania, it hit me harder. We are so lucky these organizations are in place, but it's up to us to support them. If we don't support our organizations, no one else will. It is on us, as the Talmud said, to be our guarantors. Are we doing enough? And lastly, and most grim, to an anti-Semite, they don't care how we practice religion. Anti-Semitism was built on the idea that Jews are a race. And unfortunately, we've seen this past year in America, our safety is sometimes at risk. Standing in the Ponar forest in Lithuania last year, I understood what this meant. Jews had lived in Lithuania for 1,000 years, and they were almost entirely wiped out by a shooting line in this forest during the Holocaust. They were everything from secular to ultra-Orthodox, and many were a major part of society. Over 160,000 Jews lived in Lithuania at one point, and now there are less than 4,000. Studying Jewish history, you see that time and time again, Jews felt safe where they lived and had contributed to society in great ways, only to be persecuted later. There have been almost daily attacks on ultra-Orthodox Jews in Brooklyn, including bricks thrown into a synagogue during a Rosh Hashanah service last week. What are we doing to stand by our fellow Jews? How can we do our part to return to the Jewish people? I believe we must offer stronger support for Jewish organizations locally and nationally who are providing life-saving services that we hope to never need. We need to speak out against anti-Semitism, even if it's not in our backyard. But most importantly, I believe to strengthen the Jewish people, we need to be doing more to strengthen our own Jewish identities. Here are some ways I believe we can do this. Learning the Hebrew language. This can be challenging for many of us. But before Jews moved to America, Hebrew was what bound us together. We had an insider code that we could use in the face of danger. I've seen how studying Hebrew this year brought me closer to other Jews. What would it look like to engage in Hebrew study? Another way is recommitting to look at fellow Jews as family, even when we're fighting. The idea that we are family, when internalized, will keep us standing by each other through thick and thin. We could remake our Jewish organizations to be more about building social capital with Jews different from us. We could strengthen our beliefs in Judaism and wear our Judaism loudly and proudly. In 5780, how are we making sure we are strengthening the Jewish people and taking responsibility? On this Yom Kippur, this Day of Atonement, let us return to Am Yisrael. Let us return to our messy, crazy, wonderful, frustrating, and enriching Jewish people. Let us return to the day, like the song Ba Khalil, danced by Jewish teens all over the world, that all Jews can be led by the flute, as we have been since temple times, and celebrate our wholeness and our complexity. May this be the year that the Jewish people worldwide rediscover who we are as one people, a people full of respect, mercy, and loving kindness toward ourselves and the world. Good Yom Tov.